From psychopaths to lazy bones, these are some of the NBA's biggest disappointments, and we gotta start with Zion Williamson. What a weird-ass career so far, dude. This guy was supposed to be the next generational talent, the chosen one after LeBron James, the kind of player you clear out the franchise for and build a team around. To be fair, he's shown he could be that type of talent on a consistent basis, but he's the only one that is holding himself back. Throwing it back to high school, Zion wasn't just dominating, he was straight up fucking up everything and everyone in his path. His highlight reels looked like some 2K clips of someone's pure slasher build or something. I mean, between the leg dunks in game, windmills from the free throw lines, and powerful dunks that made the whole gym shake, everyone wanted to know who this NFL defensive linebacker looking ass teen with the crazy hops was. And when those clips started going viral, he became an instant internet celebrity. No joke, people were flooding into gyms 2 hours early just to see Zion dunk in warm-ups. His mixtapes weren't just impressive, they felt legendary, like something you would have seen in Space Jam, not in real life. He was built like the Hulk, moved like a guard, and jumped like gravity was out of the question, making Isaac Newton turn in his grave. It wasn't long before ESPN, Bleacher Report, and every other major sports outlet on the planet crowned him the next big thing. Once he committed to Duke, the hype hit a whole new level. Everyone wanted to see what Zion would do on the national stage in the Blue Devils jersey, and honestly, he didn't disappoint. At least, not right away anyways. At Duke, Zion was an absolute monster. In college, playing alongside other top talents like RJ Barrett and Cam Reddish, he still stood out like the athletic freak that he was. His explosiveness was unmatched, and his motor made every game a literal show. That block against Virginia where he closed out a three-point shooter like that fucking blue shell from Mario Kart, legendary. From 360 windmills to absurd lob finishes, every game felt like a new mixtape, and he had fans, NBA scouts, and social media going nuts about him. But then came the injury, a pretty scary one that seemed small and minor at first, but ended up being way more detrimental in hindsight. Still though, he bounced back, came back stronger, and finished the season looking like the clear #1 pick everyone already knew he was. The Pelicans won the draft lottery, and just like that, Zion was headed to New Orleans, and the future of the franchise relying on him. From the jump, injuries started to creep in. Zion missed the start of his rookie season with a torn meniscus. It wasn't what fans wanted, but it's okay. These things happen. He wouldn't be the first lottery pick to battle injuries in their first year and bounce back. When he finally did play though, holy shit, he absolutely cooked. He scored 17 straight points in a fourth quarter game against the Spurs in just his third game in the NBA. The talent was there. The beast everyone saw in high school and college hadn't gone anywhere. He was bullying grown-ass men in the paint, running the floor like a freight train, and even hitting a couple threes here and there. But just as quickly as the excitement and hype returned, the injuries came back too like clockwork. And it wasn't just freak accidents anymore. It started to feel like a pattern. Year after year, Zion was either on the bench, in street clothes, listed as day-to-day, or expected back in a few weeks. And those weeks turned into months. Pelicans fans only growing in frustration, patiently waiting for their franchise cornerstone to suit up. NBA fans started whispering the word nobody wanted to say out loud: bust. Now, to be fair, Zion is 1000% not a bust when he plays. When he's on the court and healthy, he's averaging over 25 points per game on very high efficiency. He's still the bulldozer plowing through guys in the paint, but the issue is, he's rarely ever fully healthy. He's played in less than half of the possible games he could have played since being drafted, and every offseason seems to come with a new injury or false hope. A big part of his problem seems to be his body, not in terms of skill, but in terms of maintenance. Zion's always been a big dude. That's part of what made him an unreal player. But being 6'6" and carrying around 280 plus pounds while constantly relying on your bounce, that's begging for trouble. It puts enormous amounts of strain on your joints, especially his knees and feet. Remember that foot injury he had? It kept him out for an entire season, and it's the kind of injury that never quite goes away. It lingers and nags you like a bitchy ex. It makes it harder to stay in shape because you can't train to the full extent that you could before. And this led to the next chapter in Zion's story, Baconators or basketball. Now let's be real, Zion is rich as fuck now. He's young, he's famous, and has access to everything money could possibly buy, which also includes, you guessed it, DoorDash. Yeah, and here's where it gets rough. He got drafted to New Orleans, which, if you've ever been, is basically like a staple in America for having phenomenal food. Gumbo, jambalaya, like come on. That city could make even the most disciplined athlete gain 10 pounds just by breathing. So now now you got Zion stuck on the sideline with injuries, unable to fully train, and honestly probably a bit sad and shit, and surrounded by some of the best and least healthy food in America. You don't need Sherlock to figure out this fucking mystery. Reports started leaking about his weight blowing up to over 300 pounds, bro's out here looking like Lizzo. Photos from warm-ups showed up a noticeably heavier Zion. The internet, of course, was ruthless, memes everywhere, fans taking pictures of him going through drive-thrus. It was a bit harsh, but I mean, when we're not seeing him play and this is all we have to go off, it feels like it's true. And the thing is, nobody doubts Zion when it comes to his talents. That's what makes all this so frustrating. When he's locked in, when he's leaner and moving well, he looks like a top 10 player in the NBA. He's had stretches where he dominates games with such ease it's almost freakish. His footwork in the paint, his finishing, his touch around the rim, it's honestly elite for someone his age. They know exactly where he's going, and they still can't wall up and protect the tin when he's going downhill. Players around the league talking about how strong and quick he is, how they can't budge him even when they try, but then the next week, he's out again, or he looks sluggish. There have been rumors about his commitment to the team and his offseason work ethic, and while some of that might be overblown, you don't hear those whispers about guys who are grinding every day. That's why so many fans feel let down. They remember the high school phenom who looked like the future of basketball. They saw the Duke superstar who made the college game look way too easy. They watched his rookie year flashes and thought, this is finally happening. But 5 years in, it kind of feels like we're still waiting on Zion to arrive. That's not to say it's over, since, it might not be. Zion is still only in his mid-20s. He has time to get it together. He's reportedly working with better trainers now, focusing on flexibility, mobility, and long-term health. The Pelicans have tried to build around him with shooters, defenders, and playmakers to take the load off. He can still be the face of a franchise, but at some point, the potential has to become reality. The excuses won't last forever. The league moves fast, and the next generation of superstars, with guys like Wemby, Anthony Edwards, and others, are already stepping up. Zion's window is still open, but it's not nearly as wide as it used to be. The story of Zion Williamson isn't written yet, but the chapters so far, they've been a mix of jaw-dropping highlights and frustrating what-ifs. Everyone wants to see him win, because when Zion is at his best, the game of basketball is better. But talent alone doesn't keep you on that court. At some point, it's about consistency, discipline, and commitment, and that's what separates the legends from the what could have been stories. And right now, Zion is towing that line way too close. It's not too late, but it's getting late early. He's got all the tools to be an all-time great. The question is, can he finally stay healthy, stay in shape, and become the superstar that everyone believed he was destined to be back when he was dunking on kids in South Carolina gymnasiums? If you're watching this right now, there's an 83% chance you're not subscribed to the channel, so make sure to click that button for me. We're trying to hit 100K by the end of the summer, and I appreciate you boys watching. Now, Zion is pretty weird. I don't really know how to feel about it. But Deandre Ayton, this guy just pisses me the fuck off, dude. He's not exactly putting up terrible numbers. I mean, if you just look at him on paper, you'd think he's a solid big, but man, watching this dude play can give you an aneurysm, I swear to God. Sometimes showing flashes of being a star, and then following it up with just some bitch-ass move or shoddy defense immediately after. Anyways, taking it back to high school, Ayton wasn't just some tall dude dunking on 5-footers. He looked like a walking blueprint for the perfect model of a modern big man. Standing 7 feet with a soft shooting touch, natural athleticism, and a solid frame for his size. He was unstoppable at Hillcrest Prep in Arizona, putting up monster stats like 26 points and 15 boards a night while swatting everything in sight against the best talent in the country. Scouts were calling him the next great big before he was even out of high school. He was ranked number 1 in his class, and when he committed to the University of Arizona, the hype only grew stronger. And to his credit, Ayton delivered in college. In his lone season at Arizona, he averaged a ridiculous 20 points, 11.6 boards, and nearly 2 blocks a game, all while shooting over 61% from the field. He already looked NBA ready, playing against college competition. The Wildcats went 27-8, won the Pac-12 championship, and Ayton cleaned up on awards. Pac-12 Player of the Year, consensus All-American, and projected by almost everyone as a top 3 pick in the draft. Come draft night in 2018, the Phoenix Suns, holding the first pick and looking for their franchise centerpiece, went with the big man over Luka Doncic. Still stings, doesn't it? Trae Young and even Jaren Jackson Jr. were on the board. Why exactly? Because literally everyone thought Ayton was supposed to be the guy. The next dominant two-way center in the mold of an old school big, with great post work, elite rebounding instincts for his age already, and the ability to anchor a defense while stretching the floor. His ceiling in the eyes of scouts was higher than Snoop Dogg. They saw a player who could average 20 and 12, protect the tin, dominate the glass, and become a foundational piece for years to come. And honestly, his rookie year was looking like it could end up that way. Ayton hit the ground running in Phoenix, putting up 16 points and 10 rebounds a game while shooting nearly 59% from the field. He came in third for Rookie of the Year that season, trailing only Luka and Trey, and looked like he belonged in the big leagues right away. He was efficient, consistent, and gave the Suns their first real hope at a good-ass center since maybe the Amari Stoudemire days. But even in that first year, there were murmurs that maybe Ayton wasn't bringing the same intensity on the defensive end that people expected. For a guy with his size and his athleticism, his shot blocking was just meh. Not dominant at all like we thought it could be. He didn't seem to control the paint like elite bigs do, and that said, he was still young, and everyone figured the defense would only come along with time. In his second and third years, the numbers remained solid, roughly 14 to 17 points per game, still dropping a double-double, grabbing double-digit boards, and still incredibly efficient from the field. But the breakout, the leap to stardom, it never quite happened. But then came the 2021 playoffs, when everything looked like it finally had clicked. Ayton was crucial in Phoenix's run to the NBA Finals, playing some of the best basketball of his entire career. He averaged 16 and 12 boards in the postseason, while shooting over 65% from the field. He made clutch plays like that game-winning lob, ran the floor, finished tough buckets, and gave Phoenix exactly what they needed for a while from a big man. His work in the pick and roll with Chris Paul was deadly. People started to believe again this was the Ayton that the Suns had drafted. But then came the finals, and with it, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Giannis absolutely fucked Phoenix raw, including a 50-point masterpiece in the series-clinching Game 6. Ayton looked overwhelmed, outmatched, unprepared for the moment, and after that series, something shifted. Ayton just didn't look the same again. The next season, his numbers were still decent, about 17 and 10, but the little aggression he did show before was now completely gone. He didn't look like the guy who battled through the Western Conference playoffs with fire in his eyes. And to make things worse, the Suns hesitated to give him the max contract he clearly believed he deserved. That led to loads of tension, reports of arguments with coach Monty Williams, visible frustration on the floor, and long stretches where Ayton looked completely done with the organization. Eventually, he signed a max offer sheet with the Pacers in 2022, which the Suns begrudgingly matched. But the writing was still on the wall. This marriage was heading towards a nasty divorce. In 2023, the Suns traded Ayton to the Portland Trail Blazers in a deal that brought back Jusuf Nurkic and other pieces, officially ending the Ayton era in Phoenix. Now in Portland, Ayton was on a rebuilding team, no longer playing for wins or championships, just trying to put up stats. And that's kind of what he delivered. He averaged around 16 and 11, which on paper looks fine, but the energy, the defense, the presence, just not there at all. Ayton's effort came and went. One night he dropped 20 to 15 a game, and the next he'd just be offering up some cardio and shitty defense. For someone with his size, length, and natural athleticism, he was supposed to be a menace in the paint, but he rarely altered shots whatsoever. His defensive instincts were pretty shaky, and his physicality was non-existent. He was literally shooting less free throws than any center ever. It didn't help that he battled injuries too. Nagging hip, rib, and ankle issues just kept bugging him and keeping him off the floor, killing any momentum he managed to gain. And before long, Ayton was seen as just another talented big putting up useless stats on an awful team. But here's the thing that gets interesting. This offseason, in a surprising twist, the Lakers decided to roll the dice and trade for Ayton, giving him yet another fresh start and possibly his best chance yet to revive his career. With Sunshine and Luka looking for another title run before Bron calls it quits, Ayton suddenly finds himself in his best situation of his life. He doesn't have to be the focal point. He doesn't have to carry the team. All he has to do is be a solid role player, run the floor, finish lobs, grab boards, protect the rim, and bring reliable effort. With Luka's elite pick and roll game and Brown's goated court vision, Ayton can feast in the paint as a lob threat in a way he's never experienced before. It's all lined up for him to finally thrive. Low pressure, high reward, perfect role. This is also a major risk for the Lakers because while Ayton might bounce back and only deliver on the promise he showed as a top pick, there's also a real possibility that he just is who he is at this point. A talented, passive big man who struggles with physicality and doesn't anchor a defense. And for the Lakers, a team desperate for both rim protection and a tall threat to open up their offense, Ayton's defensive inconsistency is a bigger red flag than a girl that's into astrology. They're not bringing him in just to catch a couple lobs from Luka. They need him to control the paint, protect the baskets, and be a reliable presence down low when it matters. If he can't bring that, or if he continues to shy away from physicality and fade into the background when the intensity ramps up, then this move could backfire fast. And the GM will probably pick up the phone and make a couple calls before the deadline. The Lakers are essentially betting that a new environment, veteran leadership, and clear expectations will finally unlock the version of Ayton that dominated in college and flashes during the Suns' finals run. But if it doesn't, they'll be stuck with a high-paid center who gives them the same frustrating inconsistencies that made the Suns give up on him and Portland never fully invest in him. At 27, Ayton is no longer the young prospect with time to figure it out. He's in his prime now, and this is the moment to prove that he can contribute to a real contender. Otherwise, he risks becoming just another cautionary tale. A player with all the physical gifts in the world who never figured out how to put it all together. So yeah, this is a huge opportunity for Deandre Ayton. But it's also his last chance to silence the doubters, fix the flaws, and finally become the player everyone expected when he went first overall with his new teammate in Luka Doncic. The question is, will he rise to the moments or fuck up his final chance to do something impactful in the league? From being just a quiet, reliable bench player in college whom most scouts barely paid attention to sneaking into the league as the last pick in the first round that almost nobody really thought would matter, to transforming into a young, exciting star for the Rockets, Kevin Porter Jr.'s basketball journey looked like something out of Coach Carter, until everything came crashing down in one of the most disappointing and tragic turns for a player in recent years. At USC, Porter wasn't even a full-time starter, averaging less than 10 points a game and missing time due to both injuries and off-court issues, so most people weren't even sure if he'd get drafted at all. But the talent was clearly there. He was smooth with the ball, had a natural feel for scoring, and a swagger with his game that hinted at something special. That's why the Milwaukee Bucks took a shot in the dark with him as the last pick of the first round in the 2019 draft, though they quickly flipped him to the Cleveland Cavaliers. In Cleveland, he showed flashes of brilliance his rookie season, averaging about 10 points, showed he could handle the ball and get his own shot off, and fans began whispering that maybe this kid was the hidden gem out of the entire draft. But problems started creeping in again. He had a locker room outburst in his second season after the team gave his locker to another player that led to him being traded to the Houston Rockets for literally nothing and a side of fuck all. Most thought that might be the end of him and his chance in the league, but in Houston, something clicked. Given the freedom to run the offense and play bigger minutes, Porter exploded. In just his first season with the Rockets, he dropped 50 points and 11 assists in a single game, becoming the youngest player in NBA history to ever do so. He became the face of a young rebuilding Rockets squad, starting at point guard and putting up stats that made fans believe he was going to develop into a star. In the 2022-2023 season, he averaged nearly 20 a game along with about 6 assists and 5 rebounds. He looked like a legitimate star in the making, someone you could run the offense through, create shots for himself and others, and help try to carry a franchise through their rebuilding era. The Rockets even rewarded him with a 4-year, $60 million contract, and despite some concerns about his maturity and consistency, the bet seemed to be paying off. But then, everything changed, and not for the better. And not even with anything to do with basketball. In September 2023, news broke that Porter had been arrested in New York City for allegedly pulling a Miles Bridges and beating his girl. The police report stated that he attacked her in a hotel room, hitting her multiple times and causing serious injuries, including a fractured neck vertebrae. The details were actually very disturbing, and the NBA world was left stunned. This wasn't just some locker room argument or minor suspension, this was a serious crime. He probably caused permanent damage to this girl, but he did a whole lot of damage to his career in the meantime. The Houston Rockets wasted no time distancing themselves from KPJ. Within days, the GM announced that Porter Jr. would no longer be a part of the team's future, and they began working to trade him. Eventually, they sent him to OKC in a deal that was all about clearing cap, and the Thunder waived him immediately. One of the most promising young players in the league was out of the NBA. No team wanted the public relations nightmare or the baggage that came with his name. For months, Porter was in basketball purgatory. He didn't play a single NBA game during the 2024 season. Legally, he accepted a plea deal that allowed him to avoid jail time, but only if he completed a 26-week intervention program and stayed out of trouble. He ended up playing overseas in Greece for a short time, putting up massive numbers in a few games there, averaging over 20 points, nearly 10 rebounds, but that was at a much weaker league. And people weren't sure if he was actually ready to return to the NBA. Then in the summer of 2024, the Clippers shocked some fans by signing him to a short-term deal. The NBA resumed its investigation into his case and ultimately gave him a 4-game suspension. But because he had already missed an entire season, the suspension was considered served. Crazy how easy the NBA could just let shit go like that. He was now officially back in the league, but something was clearly different. Porter Jr. didn't look like the same player he had been in Houston. With the Clippers, he came off the bench and averaged around 9 points, 3 rebounds, and 3 assists per game. His confidence was not what it was. The fearlessness he used to play with had been replaced with hesitation. He was still talented, and he had moments where the old KPJ would show up for a few possessions, but he no longer looked like a future all-star like he used to. He looked like a guy just trying to prove he still belonged. Then, midway through the season, the Clippers traded him to the Bucks, the same team that originally drafted him years before. In Milwaukee, he played slightly better in a limited role, averaging around 11 points a game off the bench and hitting shots more efficiently, but he was far from a difference maker. He wasn't closing games, he wasn't starting, and he wasn't leading the offense like he had in Houston. The Bucks re-signed him in the offseason to a small 2-year deal, signaling that they still believed he could become a useful role player, but it was also clear that the dream of KPJ becoming a star had probably come and gone. What makes his story so frustrating is that the talent was real. He could create shots, pass the rocks, score at will when he was hot, and at one point, he looked like one of the brightest young guards in the NBA. But off the court, he had a lot of maturing and owning up to do. Especially with the domestic violence case, he shattered any trust fans and teams had in him. And even though he returned to the court, his numbers and his impact have never recovered. He went from being the centerpiece of a rebuilding team to being a backup option on the bench on a team that starts Kyle Kuzma, trying to prove his worth. And for a player who once dropped 50 points and 11 dimes in an NBA game, and had coaches raving about his potential, that fall from the top has been very tough to watch. Fans who once defended him now view him with disappointment, and many wonder if he'll ever come close to being that player again. The truth is, he most likely won't. At this point, KPJ is more of a caution than a success story. He had the skills to be special, but his inability to stay out of trouble and the seriousness of the crimes committed changed literally everything. The league actually gave him another chance, but the spotlight is a lot dimmer now, and the expectations are much lower. He might carve out a decent career as a role player if he stays focused and continues to contribute, but the days of calling him a future star have went and gone. He'll always be remembered, not just for what he did on the courts, for the way he nearly lost everything because of what happened off of it. His career is still going, but it's no longer rising, and kinda slowly fading. I mean, it's a little heartbreaking, because Kevin Porter Jr. could have been great. He could have been the player that made people ask, how did 29 teams pass on this guy? Instead, he became the player people point to, saying, what a waste of talents, and how does the league let this guy play? Coming out of college, Josh Jackson was a can't-miss prospect who had scouts and GMs absolutely pumped about his two-way potential, elite athleticism, and that intense competitive edge that made him look like the next future all-star after one season at the University of Kansas, where he averaged about 16 points, 7.5 boards, 3 assists, almost 2 steals, and a block a game, while shooting 51% from the field and leading one of the top teams in the country to a 31-5 record. People weren't just projecting Josh Jackson as a future NBA player, they were projecting him as a future two-way superstar. And when the Phoenix Suns selected him with the 4th overall pick in the 2017 draft, it didn't come as a surprise to anyone at the time, because everyone believed he would become one of the league's most versatile wings, possibly even an all-star, or at the very least a high-end, high-motor, defensive-minded starter who could give you some buckets while locking up the other team's best scorer. Yet, in what turned out to be one of the most disappointing career arcs in recent years, Jackson would go on to become a massive fucking bust. One of the worst number 4 picks in the modern NBA, proving that hype and athletic gifts alone don't always translate to NBA success. What's crazy is, his rookie season wasn't even too bad on paper. In fact, he averaged 13 a game while playing around 25 minutes a night and appeared in 77 games, which for most rookies is a decent season. But the numbers wasn't the problems exactly, at least on a surface level. The 41% from the field and 26% shooting from behind the arc, the poor decision making, the defensive lapses, the tunnel vision, and the lack of progression from game to game was what started making coaches and fans realize that he wasn't exactly developing like they hoped. The second year was the same shit, different pile. He averaged around 11 points on evenware shooting, and by the end of that season, it was obvious that the Suns, who had invested that valuable 4th pick in him, were beginning to lose all the faith they had. He had all the physical tools. He was 6'8", with a long wingspan, explosive first step, solid instincts on defense, but offensively he was a mess. His jump shot was bad, never improved. His handle was loose. His IQ was equivalent to a dumbass, and he didn't seem to grasp how to play within the flow of an offense. And then there were also the off-court issues, which seemed to be a running theme with a lot of these stories. Run-ins with the laws, fines, reports of immaturity and professionalism, yada yada yada, that only added to the growing concern around his future in the league. By the time Phoenix gave up on him and traded him to Memphis, the elite two-way star label had officially dropped, replaced by terms like project, liability, or harshest of all, bust. In Memphis, Jackson spent most of his time in the G League, a stunning fall from grace for someone who was once considered a cornerstone for a franchise. He did manage to work his way back up to an NBA roster, and even showed flashes of improvement finally, including a brief stretch in Detroit where he averaged around 13 points on a rebuilding young Pistons team, but by that point, the damage was done. He wasn't being relied on to be the guy, or even a reliable rotation piece. He was just another athletic wing trying to survive in the league amongst other equally athletic wings. And even though he had some moments, a few dunks in transition, a a couple 20 pieces, and hustle plays that reminded people why he was drafted so high, his inconsistency and poor shooting made him a tough player to trust. Coaches couldn't rely on him like they hoped. Teams didn't want to invest minutes in him. His career, which once looked crazy promising, stalled and then began descending just as fast. He bounced from Memphis to Detroit to Sacramento and never managed to stick in any rotation. He went from starting games and getting 30 minutes a night to barely even cracking the rotation and sitting for entire games in street clothes. The athleticism was there, he could jump out of the gym, run quick as fuck, and fly in transition, but what good is that if you can't shoot to save your life, can't make smart decisions with the ball, and can't consistently stay engaged on both sides of the court? Jackson's story is such a letdown because the ingredients were there for a crazy elite and versatile wing. But whoever the chef was just messed it up because he would not turn out to be literally anything like anyone expected him to be. He was a strong college talent with a winning mentality and early NBA opportunities with real minutes, but he simply couldn't put anything together. He wasn't some guy buried on the bench who never got a chance. He had the playing time, especially in early years, averaging 25 minutes per game in his first 2 seasons, and then proceeded to get his daughter high, get an old woman pregnant, get arrested at Rolling Loud, and show up at practice hungover, vomiting in the trash can. Josh Jackson sucks, dude. Isaiah Ryder, or JR as he was nicknamed, was kind of the talent that forced you to pay attention. Standing at 6'5" and kinda jacked, lightning quick, with a solid jumper, Ryder was a straight up menace on the court. At UNLV, he put on a show every time he touched the ball. For 2 straight seasons, he torched the competition, averaging a blistering 25 points per game across those years, making defenders look helpless while becoming a highlight reel night after night. He soared, finishing plays with crazy-ass dunks and smooth pull-ups that showed he was NBA ready. Coaches and scouts loved what they saw on the court, and fans swore he was the next great 2-guard in the making. He was named Big West Player of the Year and earned All-American honors while helping reestablish UNLV as a powerhouse. But behind all that flash and talent, cracks were already forming. Just before the NIT tournament his senior year, Ryder was suspended for fraud. He had cheated on an English paper by turning in work from his tutor or something. I mean, we've all been there. While many dismissed it as a minor mistake, a bad decision from a young kid under pressure, it should have been the first major warning sign. But none of that mattered to the Minnesota Timberwolves, who only saw the upside. And with the 5th overall pick in the 1993 NBA draft, they made their move. And initially, it looked like a steal. Ryder came into the league ready to score. As a rookie, he averaged nearly 17 points per game, won the slam dunk contest with his legendary East Bay Funk dunk, and immediately became one of the most exciting players in the entire league already. He had the swagger, the skill, and the charisma to be a star. But what the Timberwolves didn't know, or maybe tried to ignore, was that Ryder hadn't left his issues at college. If anything, they got even fucking worse. He was constantly late to practice, he clashed with coaches constantly, he was involved in a slew of off-the-court incidents that slowly put a dent in the organization's patience with him. One of the most infamous moments was when he assaulted a female manager at a sports bar in Minnesota. What's up with these broads getting beat up by dudes in the NBA? Jesus Christ. This landed him in court with a conviction for 5th-degree assault. Later, he was caught with some chronic and even racked up charges for illegally charging phone calls to random people's numbers, which was just kind of bizarre and petty for someone making that much money. Even through the chaos, his on-court talents kept him relevant. He still averaged 19 points per game over his 3 years in Minnesota, but the franchise had enough for one. They didn't want to babysit a grown man who couldn't show up on time or avoid legal trouble. So in 1996, they traded him to the Portland Trail Blazers in what at the time felt like a fresh start. But instead of maturing, Ryder doubled down on the worst parts of himself. Portland gave him a bigger role and a chance to lead. He delivered statistically. He became the team's leading scorer, dropping 19 to 20 a night, hitting clutch shots, and continuing to be a walking bucket. But the off-court issues would not stop coming. He skipped practices, missed team flights, cursed out coaches, and was fined so often that it became a routine at this point. His behavior was so toxic that Portland's front office had debates about whether his talent was even worth all the trouble he brings them. During his 3 seasons, he was suspended multiple times by both the team and the league. At one point, he was caught spitting at fans. At another, he climbed into the stands to confront hecklers. Ryder wasn't just self-destructing, he was actively dragging teams down with him. The media dubbed the team the Jail Blazers, and while others certainly contributed to that label, Ryder was doing his part. He had become a symbol of wasted potential and stubborn immaturity. Eventually, Portland had enough and traded him again, this time to Atlanta, who were hoping a change of scenery might finally wake him up. Instead, the chaos only got worse. In Atlanta, Ryder led the team in scoring, putting up solid numbers on paper, but behind the scenes, he was still a disaster. He skipped mandatory drug counseling sessions that were required as part of his agreement with the league. He was fined over 200 Gs in a single season for repeated violations of team rules, and when he was suspended again for being late, he demanded to be released rather than take the punishment. The Hawks, frustrated and worn down, agreed. Then came his brief stint with the Lakers, where he played alongside legends like Shaq and Kobe. Even there, under the strict system of Phil Jackson, and within a championship culture, Ryder couldn't get it together. He was suspended 5 games for violating the league's anti-drug policy and averaged under 8 points in barely any minutes. Still, he earned a ring when the Lakers won the title in 2001, but he was averaging more high fives than points during that run. His final shot at redemption would come with the Denver Nuggets, where he played just 10 games before being waived. By 2002, Ryder's NBA career was pretty much over. He was only 30, technically part of a player's prime years. What followed after basketball now for him was just a slow, painful, and public unraveling. Ryder didn't fade quietly into retirement, he crashed and burned to the ground. Over the next several years, he was arrested over and over again. In 2006, the story that shocked even his most diehard supporters broke, as he was charged with kidnapping and battery after allegedly dragging a woman into his car against her will and speeding off while she screamed desperately for help. What the actual fuck, dude? Bro retired and became Ted Bundy. It was a terrifying showing into how far gone he really was. His bail was set at $2 million, and while awaiting trial for that incident, Ryder was arrested. Yes, again. This time for being on the za, resisting arrest, and violating his probation. He would later be arrested for grand theft, illegal possession of a gun, and driving a stolen vehicle. Literally just playing GTA in real life. In one case, he was arrested for domestic violence against his fiancée. In another, he was caught with a loaded gun in the same vehicle he used to transport children. This wasn't just a troubled athlete, it was a troubled man spiraling into criminal behavior. Courtroom after courtroom, headline after headline, the narrative went from NBA star in trouble again to former player jailed for violent crimes. And through it all, the saddest part is knowing how much talent he actually had. Ryder could have been a phenomenal player. He had the athleticism of a young Vince Carter, the scoring instincts of Gilbert Arenas, and the confidence of Anthony Edwards. But what he didn't have was control over himself. He didn't have any discipline, he didn't grow up when the league gave him every opportunity to. Coaches tried, teams bent over backwards for him, but Ryder refused to take any responsibility for his own actions. He was given every tool, every chance, and every warning, and he ignored every single one of them. Today, his name rarely comes up in conversations about stars of the 90s or early 2000s. He's not remembered for his iconic dunk or the fact he once dropped 37 points in a single half. Yeah. He's remembered as one of the league's most frustrating what-if stories. A player who could have had a Hall of Fame career, but instead sabotaged himself into being looked at as a waste of space. The legacy he left behind isn't one of greatness, but of what can happen if you give a young, immature star a bunch of money. He became the story scouts use today when they say talent isn't enough. Because Isaiah Ryder had all of the talents in the world, but he threw it all away not just with poor decisions, but with the refusal to grow up. He went from future superstar to league problem to criminal headline. And by the end of it all, the basketball world had stopped hoping for a comeback. They were just hoping he'd stay out of a jail cell. Thank you for watching if you made it this far. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, and as always, I'll see you boys in the next one. Peace out.